In a world of rigid rituals, composure is not merely a virtue, but a mask. The world sees in the successor a symbol of steadfastness, a man forged to bear the weight of an entire institution on his shoulders. But when the spotlight fades, when the laughter of children fades into sleep, only the grim confrontation with the ghosts of the past remains. There is an invisible boundary between duty and ego. By day, he is the future king with a perfect smile. But when night falls, he is just a son searching for the missing pieces of his mother's memories. The silence in Kensington Palace is not peace, but a peculiar kind of sound, the echo of things never allowed to be spoken. Imagine a secret drawer holding a time-worn wooden box. Inside, not treasure, but a tiny, fragile hospital bracelet, so delicate that a single strong breath could make it vanish. The inscriptions have faded, but in the mind of its keeper, they burn brightly like a confession. This is not just a keepsake. It is silent witnesses, for a presence erased from official records. A chapter in history torn out, a soul forced to exist as a shadow on the margins of the dynasty. Why was an existence considered a threat? Why was the truth protected by such a thick layer of silence? I promise you, Mother, I will always seek the truth. The whispered words of the woman embodying the symbol of the English rose were not merely a piece of advice, but a promise. Spiritual covenant. Diana left behind not just memories, she left behind an unfinished journey. Her late-night handwritten letters contained no dry political secrets, but rather the vibrational frequencies of pain and genuine longing. William wasn't just reading words, he was reading wounds. When his pen touched the white page in the darkness of night, that's when the flow of truth began to break through the dam of silence that had lasted for decades. You were never destined to be forgotten. That sentence was a liberation, a flash of lightning tearing through the fog that enveloped the royal family. When dawn painted the London sky pink, the letter was sealed. The secret may remain, but the burden in our hearts has been shared on the page. History may be written by the victors, but the truth is preserved by hearts unwilling to forget. Behind the silent corridors, a new story has begun to be told, not through press releases, but through the awakening of a promise from the past. There is a sound more terrifying than noise, and that is a choice of silence. After the palace's light source departed, it was not just an architectural structure, but had become a labyrinth of echoes. Every hallway, every hidden corner seemed to be whispering about something stripped away from the mainstream timeline. William, in the form of a child, but with the mindset of a silent observer, began to realize that the world he lived in was built on layers of coded secrets. He remembered his mother's warmth, but more than that, he was haunted by the blank spaces in her stories. Let's rewind to a moment in the past where a clandestine conversation completely altered the perspective of the young heir. In a secluded room where the light was barely enough to illuminate sadness, an unprecedented concept emerged: existence is obscured. They think I'll forget, but she's also a part of my flesh and blood. That statement wasn't just a confession, it was a crack on the perfect wall of the dynasty. In the language of the keepers of secrets, the phrase kid. Here it may not just be a flesh and blood character, but a symbol of all that is most authentic, which has been forced to disappear in order to preserve a common order. You see, why would a mother have to speak of her child as a ghost in her dreams? Was a chapter of history torn apart from the moment it was written? William stood there, caught between curiosity and self-preservation. He felt an electric current of fear, not fear of a tangible force, but fear of the price of truth. The next morning, everything returned to its perfect course. Pancake smiles questions about schoolwork. But behind those sparkling eyes, she left behind a secret, spiritual testament for my son. At this point, you're probably feeling just as emotional as William is. What do you think about a sacred truth like motherhood being considered a mistake that needs to be erased? Stop for 3 seconds to click. Like, if you support William's journey, don't forget to leave a comment. Will you choose truth or the peace of the dynasty? Let's move on to the most dramatic part. Instead of defending the throne, William chose to heal history through empathy. Amidst the meticulously planned schedules, he recognized the truth's white space, haunting the stormy eyes of a mother and unaddressed letters sent to a hidden reality. It's the intersection of a life dazzling under the flashing lights and a silent world of royal secrets. A clue emerges from an old book, a photograph of a tiny creature in pink with the inscription, "My darling child." It wasn't just a sweet word, it was a parental certificate. Written with pain, Diana bequeathed a legacy of doubt to her son, believing that the truth, like a flowing stream, would eventually find its way through the cracks of silence. The 1997 funeral left behind eternal silence and unanswered questions. William grew up tormented by a name erased from the family tree, a soul forced into absolute anonymity. He realized his mother's grief was not just a broken marriage, but a deeper sorrow, systemic loss. J. As the future king begins to question the gaps, the truth begins to find its way back to the light. The truth no longer lies dormant within the old pages. When the future king decides to confront the darkness, instead of accepting silence, history turns a new page. In his childhood room, William realizes that his mother's tears from years ago were not for power, but for a love locked away. She chose silence, bearing the most cruel pain to protect a fragile life from the storm of the political system. The whispered, "I understand, mother," became a new pact. William would not only preserve the crown, but also rescue the buried truth to protect his mother's dignity. Meanwhile, at Anmer Hall, Kate inadvertently stumbled upon the code of the past. Amidst the scent of cedar and thyme, a wooden box engraved with the letter D appeared. It was not merely a memento, it was a satellite of memory, a spiritual testament patiently awaiting the moment of deciphering to heal the cracks of history. The wooden box is no longer an old object. It is a memory satellite, ending decades of silence. When Kate touched the broken lock, the hinge of history creaked, shattering the darkness to decipher a love once considered impossible. Diana's soft, slanted handwriting emerged an extraordinary inner strength hidden beneath a gentle exterior. Kate realized she wasn't just holding a book, but a treasure. Forgotten heartbeat of the entire dynasty. William walked in, and the line between the future king and his son blurred. Before him was Land of Souls, my mother's. The worn old leather cover under trembling hands became a mirror reflecting pains that were never named. The 1979 page was just the prelude to an abyss that lay ahead. The words from June 1980 appeared like a cut into reality, a deliberate disappearance. They said she didn't make it, but my heart doesn't believe them. This is a mother's indictment against the rigidity of rule, a cry suppressed to preserve a facade of false perfection. Royal power has been established. Order up humanity. Each word was like a tsunami sweeping through William's beliefs. He realized that his sister was not an illusion, but a real person. Existence was wiped out. This is the command of the bloodline. The truth has finally found its way back. He realized that the girl in the pink photograph from years ago was not an illusion of sadness, but a real person. Existence was wiped out by those who hold the rules of the game. This is the moment when truth is no longer an option, but a command ingrained in their blood. As the heir to the crown confronts the dried tears on the old page, history has officially turned a new page. Truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way back to those who deserve it. Kelly. In the quiet solitude of the attic, time seemed to stand still. As William turned the pale, leather-bound pages, he wasn't just reading a diary. He was stepping into the dark side of kingship, where the most genuine emotions are forced to give way to the glitz and glamour of the institution. The August 1980 inscription appears like a wound still bleeding. This is not a dry royal document. This is the beating of a silently broken heart. Diana, the woman of light, had to hide the abyss of the soul. Behind his iconic smile, the words written about loneliness amidst dazzling gold make us question, does the price of the crown include sacrificing the right to suffer? A shocking truth is revealed through the trembling handwriting, the existence of a blood match never been named before. I heard the first cries, and then silence. In the language of truth seekers, this is a historical question. It was haunting. They told her to forget about it, calling it a tragedy that needed to be sealed away to protect the stability of the monarchy. But how can political rules be used to suppress a mother's instincts? William stared at the two words. Daughter. His breath caught in his chest. This wasn't just baseless rumors or cheap conspiracy theories. This was spiritual frequency. It is the diary of a woman asserting her presence erased from official records. The diary ends abruptly, just before a wedding of the century. A blank page, a cruel, symbolic silence. Was that the moment when individual voices were swallowed up by the machine of duty? William, a man who had always remained calm in the face of adversity, now found himself insignificant before the weight of truth. He realized that his mother's legacy was not just her title or her kindness, but also the journey of decoding. It was incredibly painful. Kate, with her profound empathy, became his strongest support as he faced this awakening. She understood that to heal the future, one had to confront wounds from the past that had never been allowed to heal. This changes everything. William's words were not merely an admission. They marked the beginning of a surgical excavation of memory. He was no longer just an heir to the throne, he had become a guardian of buried truths. Truth, even when hidden behind thick stone walls or buried under layers of time, possesses a fierce vitality of its own. And when Diana's whispers finally found someone willing to listen, that was the moment justice began to take shape, not through legal decree, but through empathy and love. In the twilight shadows stretching across the attic's wooden floor, the silence no longer carried the heavy weight of suspicion. It had become a sacred silence. When Kate spoke softly about Diana wanting her son to find the truth, she wasn't just offering comfort, she was reaffirming a new definition of motherhood. William gazed into the distance, where a brilliant golden light was trying to cling to its last moments before fading into the darkness. He realized that his mother wasn't alone in her grief. She had chosen solitude to live, love privacy. Her bearing this secret alone was not a sign of weakness, but a silent sacrifice to protect what she considered most precious, even though it defied all royal conventions. The moment the wooden box was closed, the creaking of the hinges was like a farewell to the sorrows of the past, a small, fragile object, yet it contained a secret. Historical volume, enormous something no speech or ceremony could fully describe. William looked at the box as if looking into a memory satellite. It has finally returned to the right track. She always follows her heart even when it leads to suffering. G. This quote is not only a summary of Diana's life, but also a message. Decoding psychology. Profound. A heart, when placed above rules, sometimes creates cracks, but it is through these cracks that the light of truth can penetrate. As the two descend the stairs hand in hand, with the box pressed against their chests, it is a symbolic image of healing generational rifts. William's whispered words, "I found Mom." It's not about finding a silhouette, but about finding actual frequency in my mother's soul. The truth, though shocking, possesses a miraculous power. It draws people closer together than ever before. The palace walls may remain silent, but the atmosphere inside has changed. It is no longer a terrifying mystery, but a sense of connection. The serenity of understanding. Night fell at Anmer Hall. In the drawing room, only the ticking of time and the flickering light from glowing embers remained. Prince William sat there motionless, but deep in thought. His tea had long since gone cold like the rigid rules of the past, but the fire within him was beginning to burn in a different way. He no longer saw just the public image of Princess Diana. He saw the woman of enigmas. And in the stillness of the night, he knew that his task now was to protect that truth, not by revealing it to the world, but by preserving it as an indelible part of his family's soul. At Anmer Hall, while darkness enveloped the room where Kate had fallen asleep after her fairy tales, William's mind entered another reality. The journal was not merely a collection of pages, it was a seismic center that completely reshaped the system of values he had once trusted. Everything around him seemed to shift in color. Even the innocent laughter of his children now carried a fragile echo, a reminder that the perfect world they lived in might be built upon historical voids. William understood that there are truths a crown cannot shield, and questions that only a son has the right to pursue in search of answers. With no advisors, no press releases, and no support from the vast palace machinery, William chose a path of absolute privacy. He stepped out of the role of a future king to become a detective of memory. In his private study, the ticking of the clock seemed to mark the rhythm of secret conversations. His voice retained the calm of a soldier, yet the trembling of his hands as he held the receiver betrayed the turmoil within. He is searching for the firekeepers of the 1980s, those who stood at a crossroads of history, yet chose silence to preserve the peace of the dynasty. Amid refusals and fading memories, one name begins to emerge as a coordinate of destiny: Alice Hampton. In the language of hypotheses, she is not merely a midwife, she is a guardian standing at the threshold between existence and disappearance. Pause for a moment. How does this character make you feel? A man carries the weight of an entire dynasty on his shoulders, yet remains steadfast in his search for justice for those he loves. If you feel moved and admire his courage, leave a comment with the number 2. If you hold a different perspective or feel this character is too reckless, leave the number 5. Don't forget to tap like and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next dramatic chapters in this journey of uncovering hidden truths. Alice, who once worked in the most sensitive areas of the royal family, is now a quiet figure on the Devon coast. She carries with her the secret of a frequency of kinship. It had been cut off decades ago. A meeting under a false identity had been arranged, a scenario even the most thrilling movies couldn't have imagined. William was heading toward the sea, where the Devon waves might be pushing the last fragments of truth ashore. He wasn't looking for a scandal. He was looking for healing the past. Will Alice Hampton be the one to open the final door, or will she merely be a tombkeeper for secrets sealed by time? This journey is not just about discovering a hidden sister, but about William rediscovering the true image of his mother, a woman who loved painfully in absolute solitude. The trip to Devon is not merely a geographical journey, but a journey back in time. Before William, the English countryside stretches out like a painting of memories he has never had the chance to fully experience. The mother's whispered words from years ago, "One day you will understand." It had now become a compass leading him to a small house where the salty scent of the sea mingled with the silence of secrets guarded for half a lifetime. Alice Hampton opened the door bearing the appearance of someone who had spent her life learning to be silent. Her eyes held not surprise but the relief of someone who knew that, the frequency of truth. Finally, the recipient has been found. Beside the old wooden table under the sunlight filtering through the lace curtains, a cursed chapter of history begins to unfold. Your mother was too kind for what they did to her. Alice's words were like a bolt of lightning striking the silence. In the language of those who stand in the shadows of power, they are not specific individuals, but a vast, privileged apparatus. Order, rather, humanity. The truth emerges more painful and stark than any script. William was not the first life Diana brought into this world. A hidden chapter of history. The moment of birth is hidden. This happened in the early 1980s. Because of strict regulations and because the world wasn't ready, that life was considered a mistake that needed to be corrected. Tut-the-bit. A baby girl, a sister, an existence snatched from her mother's arms the moment she uttered her first cry. William felt as though his heart were being crushed under the weight of the truth. Diana had not only battled the press or the loneliness of the monarchy, she had battled a compulsory loss. Her screams that year were silenced by tranquilizers, but a mother's faith was never extinguished. Pause for a moment. What are your feelings towards this character? A man who carries the burden of an entire kingdom on his shoulders, yet remains steadfast in his pursuit of justice for his family. Now, William understood why his mother's grief had such a metaphysical depth. It wasn't the grief of a broken marriage, but the pain of a part of the soul that has been taken away. The truth, something that was never supposed to leave the palace's stone walls, had now been carried by the Devon sea breeze into the heir's mind. Standing before the vast horizon, William realized that the glamorous world he represented had taken more from him than freedom it had taken a part of his bloodline. The waves crashing against the shore echoed the cries of the past cries that history had refused to acknowledge. That night in his study, when he opened the diary once more, William no longer saw the dry words. He saw his mother's silent tears. Her words in the diary, "I still feel like my mother is out there somewhere." It now takes on a whole new meaning. William not only finds his mother in the pages of a book, he has found the most sacred mission of his life, to find his sister hidden by time and cold rules. William has realized a harsh truth. Silence doesn't come naturally, it is created. Design. Essay. Every deleted record, every changed name, every lost file, each brick carefully laid to build a wall around the truth. The world saw a prince who had it all: power, fame, and a perfect family. But behind the smiles for the cameras lay the weight of a parallel reality. William didn't just live for himself. He carried a burden on his shoulders. The ghost of two women. The mother passed away with a broken heart, and the younger sister was never allowed to exist in history. In the study filled with the gentle sound of falling rain, Kate's arrival was like a haven of peace amidst a storm. She saw not just a future king, she saw a man being ravaged by the weight of secrets. He can't handle this alone. Kate's words were not just comforting, they were a spiritual guidance. She understood that the truth had destructive power, but concealment was even more cruel. It gnawed at the soul from within. Their dialogue was not just a marital one, but a struggle between protecting a perfect image or save one humanistic truth. Standing by the window overlooking the dark garden, William finally understood the unease in his mother's eyes all those years ago. Diana wasn't just searching for freedom. She was searching for a life that had been lost, stolen by the darkness. Now the storm was no longer outside the window. It had moved into the heart of the air. William made a fateful decision. The palace's secrets would no longer be sealed by fear. When a prince dared to call his forgotten sister by name, that was when old order. It began to crumble, giving way to the light of justice and kinship. The Norfolk sky was tinged with silver and gray, a space where peace and profound sadness intertwined. Inside Anmer Hall, William sat silently watching the raindrops like tears of time stream down the glass. He was no longer a desperate boy searching for the past. He had become a guide. The promise to find the sister in the darkness was not only to fulfill her mother's dying wish, but also to affirm that in this world no darkness is thick enough to obscure the call of one's own blood. Time may fade memories, but it can never completely erase them. Frequency of kinship. When a letter arrives from a discreet law office in London, it's not just pages of paper. It's the echo of truth, breaking through the perfect facade of the present. Each line carries the weight of a reality denied for decades. The confidential medical records date back to before his birth. Confronted with those words, William was no longer a symbol of power. He became a man on the threshold of awakening. A decision was made in absolute silence. No advisors, no press, only the sincerity of a son searching for the lost soul of his mother. Imagine a peaceful morning in a remote countryside where time seems to have forgotten the harsh rules of the imperial court. In a corner of an old, misty cafe, a moment, the intersection of destinies. It happened. The moment William looked into the eyes of that stranger, the whole world around him seemed to vanish. It was the blue of the sea, of the sky, and of a woman who had once been the rose of the world. Aye. That shade of blue is gentle, profound, and carries the warmth of a mother who has never given up hope. She looks familiar. Those words were not merely a formality. They were a recognition of blood ties after years of being separated by silent walls. As twilight fell, that small cafe became a sanctuary of reconciliation. William knew that the outside world might never be allowed to know of her presence, for the truth sometimes has the power to shake even the most solid foundations of an institution. But he chose one, the crown of kinship, instead of cold, impersonal decrees. You will never be alone again. I promise. That affirmation was not only for his sister, but also for Diana's soul, watching from some distant place. The two lost pieces of her life had finally found each other amidst the darkness of history. Back in the reality of London, William sat at his desk in a room filled with the golden hues of nostalgia. Before him lay a blank sheet of paper, and in his hand, a trembling pen. He had spent his life learning to speak prepared words, but tonight he had to learn to write his own truth. The burden of the past, the awakening of the present, and the promise to the future all weighed heavily on the heir's shoulders. The page was still blank, but his heart was full. This was no longer a royal secret. This was the final chapter of a journey of rediscovery. Forgotten love. In the absolute silence of the office, when the clamor of duty and fame had faded behind the heavy wooden door, a new chapter was being written. This is not a royal decree, not a document for historians or the press. It is the testament of the heart. William wrote this for his future successors. He began to write slowly and carefully, as if drawing threads of memory from the deepest corners of his soul. He wanted his children to understand that behind the dazzling brilliance of the crown lay quiet truths, pains transformed into compassion, and a grandmother who had loved them with a lifetime of storms. William told his children about an absent member. In the family photographs, a woman lives far from the camera lens, anonymous to the world, but eternal in his blood. He taught them that the true meaning of kingship lies not in power or absolute perfection. It lies in humanity, in the capacity for empathy, and above all, in the power of pardon. Every word he wrote down was a release from the burdens of the past. He hoped that when his children were old enough to turn these pages, they would not see a scandal, but a journey, healing the cracks of destiny. Beyond the cold stone walls of the palace, truth lay within, living a peaceful life on the edge of the waves. His sister needed neither fame nor recognition from the crowd. She chose peace, and William vowed to protect that peace at all costs. Every year on their mother's birthday, a secret ritual was performed. 2 bouquets of flowers were always sent. First bouquet placed on the peaceful island where Diana rests in peace. Second bouquet sent to the nameless little house on the Devon coast. That's how William affirmed to the void, "We will always be a family." A connection that needed no public witness yet was stronger than any decree. As night fell, the letter was sealed and placed in a wooden box beside a photograph of Diana smiling in the bright sunlight. William gazed into those eyes that held boundless love and whispered a sentence, a final word, to an era of silence. The truth will set us all free. The burden that had haunted him for years has now vanished. Silence, once a painful weapon, has now become a tool, a space of tranquility. He closed the box, not to bury the secret once again, but to preserve a truth that had been healed. This information is for reference only based on unverified hypotheses and rumors/public opinions. Let's discuss this issue from an objective analytical perspective. Which side are you on in this journey? Key 1. For curiosity and a desire to seek the truth. Key 0 for skepticism and respect for historical secrets. Press like and subscribe. Join us as we continue to unravel the mysteries behind the velvet curtain.